Well, boys, we are getting a very late start today. It's already 5 p.m. and I'm just now picking up the camera. The goal for the day is to get this thing drivable. This is the all-wheel drive K24 Civic Type R that we've been kind of revamping over the last week or so. New Nexus ECU, new engine wiring harness. So today we need to add in a bunch of sensors on the intake manifold. The reason I didn't want to put the front clip on is so that we have full access to get all those sensors installed properly and wired up properly. So got to do that, got to do the alternator relocation. We need to get the front clip back on. I need to build the new 16AN radiator hose. What else? Just minor stuff like that, and hopefully at the end of the day this thing runs properly and we can go on a first drive. But before that, I want to let you guys in on something. I just started the newest giveaway. It's the shortest car giveaway I've ever done, and it's also the most expensive car that I've ever done. Check this out. I know you might be confused, but this is my 2000 Civic Si. You're probably thinking, Devin, you've given away Evos, you gave away a Duramax, you've given away STIs. How is this the most expensive car you've done? Well, let me fire it up so you can listen. I mean, the fuel pump itself is louder than most of my cars. That noise is the fuel pump. Ha ha ha! Can't even talk, it's so loud. So this is a Civic Si, it's a 2000, and this car has like 130 grand dumped into it. So a quick breakdown of the build. In the engine bay compartment here, it's a fully built JBR engine, sequential transmission, yes I said sequential, with a straight fab turbo kit. That's a 7385. So this car made 1,076 wheel horsepower on only 30 pounds of boost. And if you know Hondas, 30 pounds of boost is nothing. People run these things 50, 60 plus pounds all day. So if you like to go fast, you may want to win this car. Inside, nice little S2000 steering wheel, of course, a Haltech dash. Wait for it, Haltech dash, some nice Recaro seats. And if you don't know, this car is also all-wheel drive. Now the reason this is such a short giveaway is because, well, Bobby and Devin are getting married, and we're not getting married here in town. So I wanted the giveaway to be done and over with before we take off on the airplane and we go get married and then go on honeymoon and do all that fun stuff. So yeah, very short giveaway. First link down below. As always, every $3 you spend on the website is one entry to win this car. Okay, getting back to work on this clunker. So let's go ahead and deal with the sensors first. There's two sensors I was waiting on to get this all buttoned up. A coolant pressure sensor, which you don't need, but on higher horsepower cars, it's nice to know if you have pressure in the cooling system or not. I guess excessive pressure. In the instance you lift ahead, you're gonna have a lot of pressure. And then a new map sensor. So initially I had a Haltech map sensor, which worked great, but when I'm trying to clean this thing up, and they make map sensors that just screw into the manifold so we don't have to like have this hose and all this random stuff going on, I would much prefer that. So this was on here only temporary for yesterday, so we could start it up. As you can see, that's some very temporary looking wiring. And I'm going to, there's this company called Low Dollar Motorsports that makes some pretty actual nice sensors. So this whole entire car has all Low Dollar Motorsport sensors now. So here's the map, coolant pressure, and then this is gonna be a fuel pressure. So fuel pressure is gonna be in place of the gauge, and the reason for that is so we can actually monitor and data log fuel pressure full time. When we're tuning, when we're driving, anytime this car is running, instead of having to come out and look at the gauge, we can just look at the dash because it does have the Haltech dash in it as well. So let's go ahead and get these guys installed first. And that's really gonna clean up everything underneath the intake manifold. I did need an adapter, and it just so happens, if you own a Subaru, you know this brand quite well. This is an STI oil galley adapter. So an M18 by 1.5 to an 8-inch NPT. And this threads into our thermostat housing, and then the gauge will thread in like that. Of course, we need some thread tape or sealant on the units. Thankfully, that is a swivel because the sensor was not fitting. So this is actually a combo sensor. So it works as a pressure and a temperature sensor. It's a pretty handy little unit. Okay, so that's our coolant pressure and temp. Now map sensor. So we have a slight issue. I figured all of the bungs or the ports on this intake manifold were the same size, which is what, 1/8 inch NPT, but it looks like this outer one is a lot bigger. So I might need to buy an adapter, but for now I'll just have to jimmy something together to make it work because I need to get this car complete. Try not to jimmy stuff too much, but when it's one little part that's going to hold up an entire day or multiple days, I'm willing to do a little bit of jimmying. That's not bad, that'll work fine, and we should have easy access to get that in later. Anyway, this of course, like I said, is temporary. All right, so the map sensor's on, kind of dangling for now. I need to go ahead and wire up the proper connector, which the proper connector for these Low Dollar Motorsports sensors is the GT150 style. Looks like this. Now this is why it's so important to have the labels that we put on the connectors, because now we have two of the exact wires, but one is for map and one is for boost. And if they were not labeled like they are up there, we would never know. All right, that'll work for now. Let's move on. Let's install the fuel pressure sender. That's what's nice about having a standalone, because you can just add in a random sensor and look at it on your dash. Now you could argue that's not as cool looking as the gauge, but it is way more practical overall. Like I said earlier, we now have access to data logged fuel pressure full time. So we're done with all the sensors. Let's go ahead and move on to the alternator relocation. And the only reason we're doing this, well, a couple different reasons. It's gonna clean up the bay, but not only that, it's gonna give us space for our catch can. Our old catch can sat on the bottom of the car and it doesn't really work when it's sitting down there. So we're gonna go just a traditional catch can. So this is an alternator relocation kit from K-Tune, just for a K-Series, K20, K24, it's all pretty much the same, with a new pulley kit as well, or a tensioner, I guess I could say. So the OEM bracket for the AC we don't need. So the first bracket is bolting on in place of the AC bracket we just removed. So I got that bottom bracket on before it was on backwards. So I got that on properly. And now I believe we are gonna install the top bracket. Both brackets are on, and now we install the alternator. Alternator's fully mounted up in place. I'm a little bit worried it's gonna interfere with the intercooler pipe. It looks like we should be in the clear. It'll be close. I can always make adjustments later to the pipe if necessary, but I think it should clear just fine. All right, let's do the tensioner and the belt. So the tensioner sits up here like so. Man, this is gonna be clean. So clean looking. We got the alternator on, the tensioner on. Now let's install the belt. So all we have now is the crank pulley, water pump, alternator, and tensioner. No AC compressor, and of course this car is electric power steering, so we don't have a power steering pump to power either. It's a very simplified setup on the serpentine side of things. So all of these sensors and everything is sorted out up front. Got the dump tube back on, power distribution, all that is done. Now we can move on to getting that front clip back on, the core support, radiator, intercooler, front bumper beam, this entire unit right here. So we still need to pull off the AC condenser, and then we're gonna be adding a radiator fan on this side of the radiator, pushing air through. On the inside, I have a factory fan here. I'll be pulling this off and putting a higher CFM fan in place of this. Up first, let's go ahead and just pop this condenser off. I'm hoping this is going to give us enough space for a fan. It should. That is a big boy. With the radiator in its current location, we don't have quite enough clearance to get that fan on. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of modifications on the brackets. All right, so here's the deal. There wasn't quite enough space, like we discussed, in between for a fan to sit there. So for now, I just took my OEM fan off, which the internet says is about a 400 to 500 CFM. That guy's a 1200 CFM. So if that one fan's not enough, we're gonna have to figure it out later on. I think it should be fine because even cars with a half rad in one single fan usually cool just fine. So let's get this front clip up on the car, and we need to get this fan wired. Front clip is on. You can see this thing is starting to take shape and start to actually look like a car again. I'm so happy with our wiring harness. That is literally the only part you see other than the injector plugs, which is pretty bizarre. Next thing is going to be rebuilding this. This was the lower radiator hose. Everything's a 16 AN for cooling on this car. And very clearly it was leaking somewhere. So I'm just gonna rebuild the whole entire thing out of vibrant fittings and some nice vibrant hose. That is a beautiful lower radiator hose. So the car is complete enough to run. It should run way better now. Of course, with an IAT, a map sensor, everything buttoned up on the build. We don't have coolant in it yet. I just want to fire it up, make sure everything's good to go, and then we'll go ahead and do some fluids. Of course, the battery died from working on it so much with the doors open and whatnot. But let's see how easy she'll fire. Fired right up. Well, the battery actually wasn't dead, but the car wasn't getting power. I always overthink every little issue with cars. I ended up arcing out the main fuse that's in the trunk for the main power, and did not realize that until like just now. I tried to charge the battery, nothing was happening. Thought the battery was bad, and then I used my brain. So let's get this fuse installed, and then we can fire it up. Don't need that, don't need that, don't need any of that. Battery is not dead. All right, there we go, we have power. So before it was strictly just running off the jump pack, and that's why it would fire, and then as soon as the jump pack would turn off, the car would die. But we should be good now. Seemed like it fired right up. First try, no problems. And it seemed like it was idling and everything perfectly. All right, look at that. She is very, very, very rich. All the fueling from the Elite map was imported right to the Nexus map, but you guys can clearly see this thing is just kind of dumping fuel at idle, so I need to get fueling adjusted. Actually, I bet I know what that is. I bet I know why it's running like that. I need to scale this new map sensor, being that we went from the Haltech to the other 4-bar map sensor. I'm guaranteeing scalings differently. If I just scale the map sensor in the ECU, this thing's probably gonna run just like how it did before. So negative 14 PSI is at 0.5 volts. 4.5 PSI is at 43.5 volts. I need to scale my map sensor. This thing is dang near complete, Bobby. So, oh yeah, that's scaled way differently. So 0.5 is negative 14. So scaling is indeed way off. Negative 14.7 at 0.43.5 PSI. So I got the fueling much closer now. Before I run it for an extensive amount of time, I do want to go ahead and add in some water to start, just to make sure we don't have leaks. Cooling system is all bled out. Let's take this thing on its very first drive with the new setup. Now I know it's not completely different, but hey, we've made a lot of progress over the last few days, and it should drive, especially once tuned, way better. Way better. Of course, the second I pull it outside, it starts raining. And I don't have a hood on, inner fender's on, but I'm still gonna go drive it a little bit just to see how it is, make sure everything's good to go, and then we can pull it back in the shop and button her up tomorrow. Coolant temp sensor's all wonky. It's that combo that I put in earlier, temp and pressure at the same time. And if we look on the dash, that coolant temp is all over the place. So I'll just go back to the OEM K-Series coolant temp sensor for that, and a traditional pressure sensor. Oh man, she's coming down a little too hard for my liking, but we're outside without windshield wipers in the rain. See, I should probably go back to the shop. I must say it drives significantly better. So before, with the old setup, I don't know what I had wrong, or something's clearly wrong. A lot of the sensors weren't seeing proper voltage, including like the injectors, the throttle body. So pretty much every time I would clutch in, it would stall. And this things like that issue is fixed. But we are out here getting rained out. So I'm gonna go back to the shop. Well friends, she's not quite finished up, but we're getting close. Super close. Only a couple little things left. Catch can, get the hood dump finished, just minor things like that. Get it retuned, fix that weird little coolant temp issue that we're having, and this thing should be good to freaking rip.